Imagine getting engaged to the crown prince of the kingdom, but this isn't what it seems. For him, being engaged means he won't be bothered with other offers, and you've been given your freedom to enjoy your hobbies peacefully as the princess-to-be. If there is no love involved, you might think of yourself as a phony fiancé. 4 years go by in this kind of relationship until one day you see your prince laughing joyfully with another woman. So, this is it, huh? You knew one day he might find someone he truly loved, but with this newfound ache in your heart, you desired to hear how he truly feels about you. Wandering the royal castle halls, gripping a book tightly is Eliana Bernstein. She's the daughter of the Duke in the Soslan Kingdom, and both her father and brother are employed here at the royal palace. For generations, the people of the Bernstein family have been well known for being full of eccentrics who would prefer books over having 3 meals a day. Ellie is no exception, and since she was a child, she's always preferred an unfamiliar book over dresses and jewels. She was not called a bookworm, but a bibliophile princess. A normal girl would generally lament over the shame, but not her. She was fine with this life, until 4 years ago, when she had tea with Prince Christopher Asherold, the first in line to the throne. He was known as an intelligent prince, whose future the whole country looked forward to. Even his looks were simply dazzling. On that day, he had told her, "Lady Eliana, you need only read your books by my side." At that point, she wondered if she was chosen to be his official book reader, but was shocked to find out he was actually proposing to her. She was surprised, since this was the first time they had met. Moreover, the Bernstein family is the lowest among the nobility ranks. The prince was fine with that, however, since the court was rife with issues about political factions and power struggles. Ellie thought it was strange, since her family wasn't associated with any faction and neither her brother nor father had any interest in having power. The prince then added that his mother and those around him had been pestering him to find someone to marry. He also argued that since she was a young lady around the age of her social debut, she couldn't escape her duties of being a noble. If she became his fiancée, she could refuse invites to matchmaking parties and balls, and instead use that time for more of her reading. Ellie accepted the idea, but took this to mean there would be no romantic feelings in this arrangement. The prince then sealed the deal with the fact that she'd gain access to the royal archives, where she could read and borrow any books from them. This was a bibliophile's dream. The imperial archives? Only certain people are allowed to visit, and it holds the cherished documents of the royal family. She could hardly contain her excitement. The prince solemnly promised her, and opening the door to the grand archives made Ellie ecstatic. Starting on her first book here, she was so happy. The prince then showed her to his office, where she could read without interruption. He wanted her to be comfortable, but still, she felt bad inside, being a phony fiancé only in name. The prince would often watch her as she read. Surprised at her being so lost, she couldn't even perceive him trying to talk to her. She would read book after book. She tried to read as much as possible while she was still his fiancée. She would read daily, even as the seasons changed 4 years later. One day, the prince asked about a particular book she picked out. It was about the history of the old empire. After reading this one, she'd have finished the entire history of the old empire in the archives. But she felt saddened, knowing there were still other old records written by people who were neither historians or novelists, and those were difficult to obtain. After another reading session, Alexei appeared, annoyed that the prince hadn't been around all afternoon to handle his work. So, he wanted Ellie to hand these documents to Theodore. While going to deliver the documents, she was approached by Glenn, who decided to help her out. It's his duty to see her off every day when she returns home, as the prince's fiancé. And again, being the prince's fiancé for 4 years now still made Ellie feel guilty inside. They brought the documents to Lord Theodore, Chris's uncle. He in turn let her know the book she requested arrived today, and she sparkled hearing she'd have the chance to read The Travels of Parco Molo. Oh, it's a parody of the guy who traveled the Silk Road. Chris then arrived, teasing that Ellie seemed to enjoy talking to his uncle more than him. Well, of course, it'd be more fun to speak to the guy who manages the archives than the prince, who had such rigid duties. Alexei came in, exhaustively having finally found the prince because there were internal documents piling up that required Chris's approval, and he needed Chris to head back to his office immediately. With the work finished, The prince saw Ellie off home in a carriage, gifting her a jewel and delivering his sweet words, saying it paled in comparison to her. After getting dropped off, she was a little stun-locked, having almost mindlessly believed his flattery. Her brother Alfred admired the pretty jewel. However, Ellie wanted to know when it was appropriate to return it. Since she was just a phony fiancé, she didn't want to steal money from the national treasury through this. And hearing all her reasoning made Alfred nervous. Getting her hair combed, Ellie's maid Annie spoke of the daughter of the Viscount who came to the inner court a few days ago for etiquette training. Ellie remembered her name to be Irene Paucus, the opposite of herself being very outgoing and sociable. Annie apparently hadn't heard very good things about Irene and warned Ellie to be cautious of her. In any case, Annie thought of Ellie's hair to be truly beautiful. She couldn't comprehend how the prince could put someone as beautiful as Ellie aside. After all, it's been 4 years since their engagement, and Ellie is 18 now, so why did he keep putting off their marriage? Ellie reflected on those words in her bed that night, remembering she and His Highness agreed on the engagement that would coincidentally benefit the both of them, because their romantic feelings simply did not exist. The next day in the archives, Ellie noticed the ladder she wanted to use had a broken step. She then heard a scream and saw Irene Paucus apologizing to Theodore. She felt terrible for accidentally soiling Ellie's book and tea. Ellie then introduced herself and Irene apologized to her as well. Theodore told Irene to stop apologizing because it was Ellie's fault for leaving her book unattended, and Ellie agreed. With Irene taking her leave, Theodore wanted Ellie to be careful, but before he could leave, Ellie warned him of the ladder that had a broken step. As the day went on, Ellie noticed Irene was talking it up with all the important men of the royal palace. Later, Ellie rushed because she was late to an important gathering and found Irene drenched in water for some reason. Then, Glenn arrived, wishing she had said something earlier. He then noticed Irene was soaked and told her he'd walk her to her room. And as they were leaving, he told Ellie this get-together has been cancelled and that she needed to return to her room. The guard who sent Ellie home informed her there was a problem with the pipes in the rose garden. The next day, Ellie noticed Prince Chris hadn't been in his office for a few days now. She tried to get books from the archive like usual, but was informed by Theodore she needed to refrain from entering for the time being. She was disheartened having to leave, but nothing was being explained either. She tried chatting with Alexei and Glenn, but they told her not to be around them either. Later, she got a visit from the prince, who brought her a book she'd been wanting to read about the old empire that wasn't written by a novelist. It took him a while to get, since it wasn't really on the market, and he wanted to give it to her right away. He thought it would make her happy. She blushed, knowing the prince went out of his way for her, and she gave him a heartfelt thanks. The prince started blushing himself and turned away, quickly getting up to mention he heard she was going to visit her aunt tomorrow. This was because her aunt had a backache, so Ellie planned to spend the week caring for her. The prince then said he was sad he wouldn't be able to see her, but wanted Ellie to take care of herself and come back to him. 5 days later, Ellie had convinced a friend to continue nursing her aunt in her stead, so she was finally able to return to the royal archive. While reading, she heard the familiar laughter of her prince, but became wide-eyed, seeing he was spending time with Irene. Ah, the time has finally come. Her days of being the phony fiancé would soon see their end. She knew this would happen eventually, but she wondered why her heart was aching. Her place was being taken by Irene. Now, she couldn't enter the royal archives. That's most unfortunate. Ellie thought about all the flattery the prince threw her way, and felt she at least wanted to hear their engagement be dissolved by him personally. Approaching the prince's room, Glenn was surprised to see her, and with the door open, Ellie could hear the voice of a girl giggling in response to the prince. Oh no, the prince was enjoying Lady Irene's storytelling, as he told Irene any gift he crafted her would pale in comparison. Ellie became mortified. So, the jewel she received from him was nothing special? Chris then spotted Ellie and stood up quickly in shock. He thought she was still supposed to be visiting her aunt for a few more days. And oh man, even Alexei and Glenn knew the prince shouldn't have said that like he got caught. Ellie thanked the prince for his concern for her aunt, and apologized for interrupting his and Irene's pleasant chat. But she came to return the book he gave her, and it only got worse for Chris when she said she no longer needed it, and left it right in his hands before taking off. It was strange how Ellie only noticed just now she's in love with Prince Christopher, but he's already found someone he loves. No matter the plethora of books she read, no matter the knowledge she acquired, It was completely useless. Her heart knew she was the overthinking bibliophile princess. It's been 4 days. Ellie received a notice that she had borrowed a dictionary from the Royal Archive, and Theodore needed her to return it. Both her father and her brother offered to return it in her stead. However, she decided to do it herself to make it clear where her feelings stood. Peeping around the castle, she heard some guys mention the prince sent an envoy to the Earl Casole, Irene's family. They were surprised Prince Chris might seriously be switching from the Bernstein fairy princess to Lady Irene, although she'd never heard anyone call her that before. Wandering some more, Alexei spotted her and asked that she take the books he had to the archives, and to also deliver a message to the royal office telling them, "You cannot sow seeds of progress with a joke." He was pissed for a reason she couldn't quite understand. Walking up some stairs, her hands were full. Ellie suddenly heard the screams of a woman behind her fall, and it was Irene? One of the servants, Alan, came to check on her, and then a whole crowd came gathering. Irene began opening her eyes, and then pulled into Alan's chest, tearing up claiming Eliana pushed her. Then the prince made his entrance, asking what happened. Irene said she tried to talk to Ellie, but Ellie blamed everything on her and pushed her down the stairs. What's this bitch talking about? That did not happen. Chris then told Irene if there was more, he wanted to hear it. So, Irene went on about how she's been harassed many times here in the inner palace. She claimed that she was called a low-class aristocrat, treated as a maid, forced to skip meals, and on top of that, her bed was moved to the stables, and that all of this was done under the orders of the future queen, Lady Eliana. She claimed she got soaked in water when she went to retrieve a rose at Eliana's request, and that Ellie laughed at the sight of it, but that definitely didn't happen. She claimed she went to the archives on Ellie's request, but the ladder she used was tampered with and she nearly fell off. But I'm pretty sure Ellie reported that. And Irene also claimed she received snacks from Eliana that had bugs in them. Ellie wondered how she could have been such an active bibliophile princess. The prince then questioned if Irene was sure Ellie pushed her. When she started confirming, she looked up at Ellie to realize in shock that Ellie's hands were completely full. Chris then walked up to Ellie, sighing because he thought he told Alexei to stop putting his work on her. Behind him, Irene begged at Chris to believe her, so he called for a witness. Alan said he saw her fall, but he didn't see anyone push her. And in fact, he was also a court musician. With his adept ear, he actually heard her scream before she fell down the stairs, and then revealed this was all according to Prince Christopher's plan, especially since the guards had brought Irene's father tied up. The prince then declared both Irene and her father were under arrest for the attempted assassination of Eliana Bernstein. This is not what Ellie thought this was all about. Irene continued to play victim, saying the prince who was with her is who he truly is. She begged him to go back to the way he was before. Chris took this as disrespect and decided to recount what happened, so Ellie didn't get any false impressions of him. First, concerning the inner palace, Eliana has no authority here. The one in control is the current queen, Henrietta, his mother. Alan then revealed himself to be a secret pawn to the prince, who'd been keeping tabs on everything to make sure no one brought harm to Eliana. Then, through that, the prince brought up the evidence of Irene tampering with the archive ladder, the snacks that were never contaminated, and the water from the pipes in the rose garden. It was through the garden party an unidentified intruder had entered the royal palace, but they fortunately were seized by Glenn and the other royal guards. The intruder's goal had been to assassinate Eliana. With all the tampering that had been happening, Theodore had actually warned Ellie. Ellie teared up, realizing they weren't pushing her away, but had been trying to keep her safe. Irene shouted, saying someone had been plotting against her, but besides that, she argued Eliana was sitting in a position way above her status, and challenged her worthiness to become queen, claiming Christopher was being deceived by her. Now, Chris had 100% of the evidence he needed, and wanted to personally elevate his fiancée's achievements and reputation here and now. One of the subjects pointed out that 4 years ago, Eliana recognized there was corruption in a part of their kingdom that was part of the fishing trade, and since pointing it out, business there has been thriving. The chefs improved their cooking from books Ellie recommended, and new medicinal herbs had been discovered thanks to her readings. Ellie had predicted a cold freeze of one of the kingdom's cities, and suggested they stockpile resources so they could get through it safely. It seems Ellie's knowledge from her readings had very subtly helped the kingdom in many ways. Chris was so proud of her work. She wondered why his look kind of came off as, "You can't escape from me now." The Duke and his daughter were sent away, and all the nobles, even the ones who couldn't accept Ellie, had now given in. Again, all according to Chris's plans. He then announced if anyone had objections against he and Eliana's engagement, to step forward. But instead, everyone clapped, cheering them on. Ellie blushed. She thought she was supposed to be the phony fiancé. However, Chris just looked at her and whispered, "Even when you leave the stage, I don't intend to let you go, Ellie. Ever since that day, I've eagerly waited for this moment." Just like I've eagerly waited for you to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Here at My Shoujo Weekly, I've got plenty of fun stories to share with you, involving drama, romance, and action. So come on, hit that subscribe so we can vibe. Later, Theodore, Glenn, and Alexei apologized for keeping Ellie in the dark about all this, and she felt truly blessed to have been in everyone's hearts. Alan then appeared, greeting Ellie and explaining he was the one who spread her name of Fairy Princess. In the past, she remembered having been called Phantom of the Library, so the new title was a surprise to her. Alfred rushed in, having just heard about all the commotion Ellie's been in, and that's when Prince Christopher requested Alfred tell the Elder Bernstein that all requirements had been met. Alfred accepted, but he told Chris if he ever made his younger sister upset again, he would mobilize all of the Bernstein family to deliver consequences, to which Chris was willing to accept. The King and Chancellor then wanted a word with Chris to hear details of this whole situation, but instead of seeing them, Chris took Ellie away because they had some urgent matters to attend to that concerned the destiny of the royal family. However, they just ended up in Chris's office, where Ellie was concerned about what this matter could possibly be. Chris apologized to Ellie for having incited so many misconceptions and giving her anxiety. He explained that when they got engaged, he was given requirements by the Elder Bernstein and her father. Baron Bernstein had told Chris he must receive approval from the other nobles without using the alias of the Bernstein name. And second, he must gain more of Ellie's interest than books do. The deadline was 4 years, when Ellie would come of age, and if the requirements were not met by then, the engagement would be annulled. This is why he couldn't marry her even when he came of age. Ellie wished she had known about this earlier. However, Chris knew that if he told her 4 years ago, she would have responded with something like, "Don't bother going to so much trouble and choose someone else as your fiancé." And then she acknowledged he was probably right about that. She apologized, but the prince was fine with it, since he succeeded in getting her to have more interest in him than her books. He cared so much for her safety. He even got Ellie's aunt to feign her back pain in order to get away from the castle. This of course unfortunately led to Ellie being so misled, she felt the need to return the book he gave her, and seeing how heartbroken she was then, his mind had gone blank. He truly regretted the fact that he deeply hurt her. He wanted to see her face full of joy reading the book he got her. He then sat her down to ask if she'd accept it once again, and she did it with a bright smile. The moment felt right. Chris began closing in for a kiss. However, Ellie actually wanted to know the Bernstein's alias name. We turned back time to a 12-year-old Prince Christopher, where he'd knocked over books like dominoes in the royal archive. Ellie had come in, shouting at him to apologize to the books, completely ignoring who he was and his status. To Ellie, books were silent ancestors and humanity's treasures. She demanded he apologize again, and he actually did. Visiting the archives more often, he always found Ellie reading in the same spot, and one day, he asked to read with her. Hearing her speak so patiently, he began to feel something, until one day, he told his father and the Chancellor he wanted to marry Ellie. Saying all that to her, she actually didn't remember those events at all, or even having met Prince Chris back then. Regardless, that's when he had first heard the alias, the Brains of Sosland, in relation to the Bernstein family. It's an alias known only to people of the royal family and a small part of the palace. The Bernstein family have been equally prosperous during the reigns they served. Both Ellie's father and brother are highly valued for their abilities. However, because of the nature of their family, the two of them chose to live buried in books, rather than rise to prominence. But it is that bibliophile living that is said to be the source of such knowledge. Ellie felt honored to discover this truth, since she simply thought her family were generations of book lovers and had no significance. It was most unfortunate that the moment Chris had intentions to marry Ellie back then, that Baron Bernstein stopped bringing her to the castle to avoid conflict. But now, no matter what happened, he had no intentions of letting her go. Ellie could feel his words. Her prince didn't want the Bernstein name. He wanted her and her alone. She then began feeling the uneasiness of being the phony fiancé fading away in her chest. He told her that what mattered most is that he wanted her by his side now and forever, and asked if she wanted the same. She thought of all the moments she experienced with his endearing look towards her, and asked if she was allowed to stay by him. The two stared at each other romantically. Ellie was glad to have learned about something she couldn't get just from reading books. The prince then pulled in his beloved bibliophile princess for a kiss. Queen Asherold often read the tale of a prince and princess who happily wed to Chris during his childhood days. Chris wanted to know what happened to the couple after the tale ended, so the queen told him they probably went through sad and painful times as well, but overcame them as long as they were together, and even if they were separated, they could always speak magic words that people who truly loved each other could only mention. Ellie and the prince got dressed in disguise for travels outside of town, and seeing how handsome the prince looked, Ellie turned away blushing. She's been feeling antsy since the day they kissed. Like even though she wanted to be with him, she wanted to run away. But if she was away from him, she would feel so lonely she could hardly stand it. They were going out to visit a rare book vendor troupe called the Star of Sicily. If they missed it today, then they'd have to wait another 3 years for them to come again. And Ellie has been eager to buy from them for a very long time. On the way there, Ellie assumed the prince must have known for this desire from their childhood, but she still felt bad she couldn't remember meeting him back then. Reaching the market, Ellie marveled at the sight of the books in the open space, and with Chris taking her hand, she pulled him along with a smile. Purchasing books, their flirting got so bad, one of the vendors told them to take it somewhere else. Observing their lovers' banter, Alan certainly enjoyed himself chuckling. Then suddenly, they heard a scream, and 2 boys came running, getting stopped because they had stolen some books. One of the boys, named Paolo, explained a Bernstein noble had told him to steal it. Ellie was shocked to hear someone slandering her family's name, so Chris intervened and the other boy, Renee, mistaked Chris for being his father? They then sat down for lunch, where they learned that Renee's mother was sick and wanted to see a doctor. However, the Sicily people would not see her. Knowing that, a nobleman claiming to be from the Bernstein family approached them to steal a book in exchange for getting a doctor to treat Renee's mother. Renee believed Chris to be his father, since his mother had described him to be a knight with the same blue eyes, but also because Chris knew the name of the Star of Sicily's doctor, Dr. Lecce. Apparently Renee's mother was a dancer for the troupe, but Renee's father, a Sazlo knight, had also gotten to know the doctor as well. Ellie began giving a suspicious look towards the prince, as if to question if he somehow lived a double life. Chris then gently gave Renee his spoon and told him to focus on eating. He and his men were going to handle business elsewhere. Paolo then questioned Ellie about some things. Having learned she was a noble from the Bernstein family, he wondered if she was one of those mole nobles, the type that were cocky and looked down on the Sicily people, and other types of common folk. He only stole that book to help out Renee, but if a doctor would just see Renee's mother, they would have never done it. Paolo was so angry at Ellie, he began shouting at her, but seeing it was making Renee upset, he calmed down, and the 2 boys apologized. Ellie wondered what she could do for them. She began explaining no one from her family would ever steal a book. If it's a book they feel compelled to have but can't get it, whether they plead for it or are made to drink poison, they will read it regardless. Paolo obviously stated drinking poison would be worse, making everyone chuckle a little. Afterwards, little Renee held Ellie's book and took a nap by her side. Paolo then wanted to know what Ellie's relationship was with Chris. Were they lovers? Ellie blushed at the thought, but felt since she couldn't remember when they had first met, she didn't feel confident saying they had that kind of relationship. Paolo wondered why she sounded so unsure, but either way, he wanted for them to be able to borrow Chris as Renee's father for the day, even knowing he definitely wasn't. Chris appeared right behind Ellie, picking up Renee, saying maybe they should get approval from him for something like that, but now that he's handled his business, he's going to have them speak with the chief of Sicily and deal with the nobleman who's been slandering the Bernstein name after. Chris was wondering how this happened. He just wanted to play knight and protect Ellie, but instead, now they were babysitting. Renee woke up, and with him staring at Chris wondered if he had also made that same look when he was younger. Chris told Renee the tale of a young blue-eyed boy whose mother was moved to a distant land in order to cure her sickness. The boy was so worried, he prayed every day and wrote many letters. Then finally, his mother overcame the sickness and came back. However, she had become a completely different person. She became strict and cold, and wouldn't even smile at the boy. The boy was very hurt, and even cried a little. Then, he realized an evil wizard must have casted a spell on his mother, so the boy studied hard every day because he wanted to break the spell, only to be unsuccessful. Then one day, a princess who could break spells appeared right in front of him. She was the fairy of the library, who told him the magic words to break the spell. Important things can't be seen with the eye. After that, the boy realized he had overlooked what was important to him. In truth, the mother that he thought had changed had lovingly taken the letters from the boy and treated them as treasures. That's why from then on, even when his mother was hard on him, the boy was fine. The lesson Chris wanted to impart on Renee is that what's important is always invisible, so he must not lose sight of what was important to him. Accepting these words, Renee stopped calling Chris Dad and instead called him Mister. Ellie brought back some treats, so Chris wanted her to feed him. She was already embarrassed, but it got worse when Chris lightly bit her finger as well with the treat. She told him she wasn't food, so he put it in further, saying, "Really? Then why is it so sweet and delicious?" Making Paolo lose his appetite. They then arrived to meet with Dr. Letzi, who apparently Chris owed some drinks to from 6 years ago. 6 years ago, before getting engaged to Ellie, everyone in the royal family told Prince Chris to give up his attachments to his childhood crush. However, he was insistent, claiming he only had feelings for one girl. He came upon the Star of Sicil troops market that only appeared once every 3 years, according to what Ellie had told him. That's where he encountered Dr. Nicola Letzi. The doctor, while drunk at the time, warned that Tanuki, known as Ellie's father, would take advantage of Chris because he was still too naive and his world still too small. He advised Chris to polish his skills and talents for the day he and Ellie's paths would cross again. That way, they wouldn't be torn apart. In exchange for the doctor's wisdom, however, he wanted all of Chris's money to buy drinks. Returning back to the present, Dr. Letzi presumed this girl was the young lady Chris was referring to back then. Chris told Renee to return to his mother for the time being, so Ellie followed the boys out. She kept contemplating seeing a different side to the prince here than anywhere else. Though she was on one hand happy, the fact that there's a past she was unaware of also gave her anxiety. But still, what gave her the most anxiety is that she couldn't remember a single thing from when she first met Chris in their childhood. Alan caught up to them to tell Ellie she didn't need to suffer alone. He advised her to tell Prince Chris her grievances and anxieties. Otherwise, Glenn might become the target for Chris's anger and get discouraged. So she apologized for making them worry. They then heard the loud whispers of some of the other Sicil boys calling out to Glenn and Paolo from a bush. These boys had also been given orders by the false Bernstein family to steal books. But since they refused to do any more stealing, that nobleman locked Renee's mother up in his mansion. The boys heard the man mention he was going to burn all the books to get rid of the evidence as well. This is not a territory you cross with Ellie. She demanded to know where this noble was, and the boys led her there. Before the nobleman could begin the burning, Ellie arrived just in time to stop them, and she recognized this man from social events. He's Baron Mole. She meant Maudsley. Regardless, she thought people who burned books were lower than animals, beneath ground beetles. This man specifically had used children to steal books, and deceived others with her family name. The Baron tried to claim this was all preposterous, and that he had simply purchased these books. He wanted to make an agreement. Ellie keeps quiet about his book burning in exchange for him keeping quiet about her colluding with 3 wanderers of Sicil. He hated the measures the Bernstein family had proposed, investing more of the kingdom's budget into research for curing illnesses rather than weaponry. Ellie wasn't fond of this at all, thinking a man who was willing to burn books would someday burn people. She wanted the country to remain a peaceful one. The Baron didn't like that, so he had his men threaten her, only for the prince to intervene at the right moment, leaving Baron Maudsley in complete shock. As the prince drew closer to ask what the Baron was doing to his fiancée, the Baron began trying to say this was all a misunderstanding. This didn't fly with the prince though, so he arrested the Baron and his men. Ellie tried to apologize for all the trouble she caused, so the prince drew her in close to hold her, now knowing he couldn't take his eyes off his beloved fiancée for even a second. They then went inside the mansion where Renee embraced his mother, and Ellie had a somewhat saddened look because Renee's mom reminded her of her own. Renee told his mom about meeting a Soslan knight with the same blue eyes as himself. and retold the fairy tale that Chris told him, mentioning that what's important is always invisible. Hearing that made Ellie remember when she had said that in her younger days. Somewhere inside, Renee had already known his father wasn't alive anymore, but he wasn't going to run away from the truth anymore. As a proud member of the Star of Sicil, the troop's people always sought the truth, and with tears in the mother's eyes, she held Renee close. Chris then told the boys and Renee's mother about a kingdom institution specializing in disease that opened to the public about 10 days ago. It's a hospital that anyone could come to freely. The country is running it, but the person in charge was in fact his fiancée, Eliana. This was news to Ellie, wondering why she was put in charge. However, the prince explained she was the one who initiated it. Back when Ellie and Chris had first met, she explained her mother died 3 years prior, and she had often read books her mother liked to try to feel what kind of person she was. She also wanted to find out if there was a way to cure her mom of the illness she had back then. She hoped one day, just like there are books in a library, that there would be a library of doctors anyone could make use of. If there was, then maybe there'd be less people that grieved the loss of their mothers, like Ellie did. She loved the idea of a charity hospital where anyone could be seen. Ellie blushed at Chris remembering such an important detail about her. Paolo then asked what was going on. She said she was unsure about them being lovers, but now looked like she was totally into him. Ooh. Remembering what Alan had said about opening up to Chris, she admitted her insecurity about not remembering when they first met a long time ago. She felt terrible that Chris had all these cherished memories of her, but she couldn't reciprocate. However, Chris just held her close and kept saying her name over and over, giving her a light kiss, which made her push him away because they were in front of everyone. He could hardly help himself though. He was just so happy she's making an effort to remember. Paolo goaded her to give Chris just a little kiss, like the old saying of the spell cast on the princess that could be broken by the prince's kiss. This caused Ellie to remember something finally. On the way home, Chris admitted he had his own fears as well. He was worried in the time they were first separated that Ellie would have become a different person. But nothing about Ellie changed. She remained the same bibliophile princess that he knew. She was mostly unchanged from these past 4 years as well, but now he's seen she's grown a little, and told her he's fallen in love with her all over again. Ellie told him she felt the same, and that she's come to think of him as more precious to her than books. She then asked for the magic words he promised her back then, the same ones only lovers could speak to each other. So as their faces drew closer, he told her, "You are my treasure." Then they kissed. On another peaceful day in the kingdom, a man from another nation arrived, hoping Eliana Bernstein would live up to his expectations. Ellie was in a rush to make it to Chris, who was hoping for a hug, but she left him hanging, and she had no idea. Feeling her hair, he told her he felt like canceling his official business. He was going to be gone for more than half a month, and knew he'd be lonely without her. She was concerned for his safety, and asked him if it would be more effective to give him a doll made of human hair or a quill with blood letters carved in it. Hearing this made the prince and everyone else somewhat disturbed. However, she just wanted to make him a special safety charm. She'd need a bit of his hair for the doll, and the blood letters would be his name engraved on the pen using her blood. There is a legend that if she takes good care of said doll, that he will be safe, and if she uses up all of the pen, her thoughts would reach him and grant her wish. Chris paid this freaky legend no mind, and took this as Ellie just being worried about him. She tried to tell him she'd be lonely too, but as he began taking off, she just couldn't get the words out. She came up to him at his carriage, and was now horrified she might say those words in public. So, he just took one of her ribbons as a charm instead. While Chris was away, Ellie was in charge of the idol domain, specifically the Christ Palace in his stead. There, she had to attend the autumn hunting festival with her servant Jean by her side. Her friend Lilia then came up to show off her hunting outfit, and expressed it was too bad the prince wasn't there. There's a tradition where skillful gentlemen that excel at hunting are honored with a wreath that they present to the lady they fancy. Lilia was also concerned that since Glenn and Alexei weren't here as well, Ellie had no one to protect her from Lady Sophia, who also had her sights set on Prince Chris. Lady Chryse, the host of a tea party, had also wished Chris was here to show off his talents. One of the other women brought up an unrecognized attendee, and we learned his name was Irvin Orlanza. He's the son of Lady Chryse's old friend who wed in a foreign country. The women were then alerted of a woman who fell off of a horse during the hunt, and saw Lord Theodore carrying Lady Sophia back. He got off of his horse to personally tell Eliana he'd be the one to give her a wreath in Chris's stead. Lightly giving her hand a kiss made the girls shriek, but Sophia didn't seem too happy. Theo then took this opportunity to whisper to Ellie that she must never act alone. Later that night, a ball was held, where several men took turns dancing with Ellie, even waiting in line for their next dance with her. She reached a point of exhaustion at some point. Theodore then asked for a dance, telling her it was so admirable to see how hard she was working on Chris's behalf. After their dance, he told Ellie her dress looked beautiful on her, as if enchanted by the spirit of the grapes. He felt as if he might be intoxicated by her. This made Ellie imagine being complimented by Chris, so she thanked him. After taking his leave, Sophia and her cronies came by to chastise Ellie. I guess Sophia is the villainess here. The three began poking at Ellie for having so many dance partners. She came off as an uninhibited woman looking as if she were begging for attention. So Lilia teased them for not being able to tell the difference between socializing and being uninhibited. Ellie was, however, concerned with Sophia's leg. She brought up her knowledge of treating sprains with raw horse meat, and this grossed out the three to the point of leaving. Outside, Ellie decided to take a breather, and was approached by Lo Hayden, the lord of the kingdom's Edea frontier territory. He thanked her since the people of Edea were particularly vibrant because of some decisions she had made. However, he wasn't happy because his people, being a country on the border of another, took pride in defending their homeland from invaders. Even though Ellie had taken measures to prevent war instead, he thought of Ellie's knowledge only being the idealism of a pensive young lady who only knew the world of books. He wished for her not to interfere with the way they've always done things. After he left, Ellie took his words to heart. She began thinking of herself truly as the over-theoretical bibliophile princess, but didn't want to say it out loud because it'd only make her miss and want to confide in her prince more. But Irvin then appeared to greet her. Irvin didn't expect the princess to be such a doll of a lady. He teased her for being on the verge of tears after the count had said some harsh words to her. He could hardly believe she was the brains of Sosland. Ellie was shocked that he knew her family's alias name. Where Prince Chris was staying, he got word that several unidentified thieves had crossed the border and gathered in the idle domain. And on top of that, a guest of honor had entered the country. Concerned for Eliana's safety, Chris mobilized his intelligence to act as her shadow immediately. The next day, Ellie was excited to spend time in the Christ family library. She spotted Lord Owain attempting to court Lady Anna, whose husband died not too long ago. However, she had no interest in him. They then spotted Ellie and began talking about the origins of the Soslan kingdom. The moral of the story correlated to how poorly Lord Owain treated women, so we tossed Anna aside and attempted to discipline Ellie. However, remembering the techniques Jean taught her to defend herself, she smacked Lord Owain with a book and kicked him in the worst spot, taking him out. Although, she was horrified by what she did to the book she was holding. Later, Ellie and Anna had tea with Theodore, while he scolded her for acting on her own again. He warned her that people saw her as an easy target without Chris, and told her to be careful. He then detailed the history of the idle domain. Before becoming an area under direct control of the royal family, the previous lord in charge of this land attempted a rebellion, and was then eliminated. Theo had some personal history because that particular lord was Duke Slade, and 10 years ago, Theo had feelings for the Duke's daughter, but refrained from having a relationship with her because her eventual sentence was death. Alan then arrived to deliver a message from Chris, who said, "You should just be yourself, Ellie." Well, actually, there were more cheesy lines, but Alan wanted to just keep it to the point. This touched Ellie's heart. She felt a surge of energy just from the prince's words. So that night, she prayed her prince was also in good health. On his way to his next destination, the prince was stopped by some bandits. After beating them down, Chris was anxious. He just wanted to see Ellie again. They stayed at a local inn, were even trying to relax. Chris was deeply concerned for Ellie. If anything were to happen to her, he'd only blame himself. He wanted her to be by his side so badly, but if she hadn't gotten engaged to him, then she would have lived a peaceful life surrounded by her beloved books. He knew with his desires, he was a selfish, self-serving prince. The next day, Ellie got on horseback, because Sophia goaded her by saying if she was supposed to be serving here in Chris's stead, shouldn't she be commending the abilities of the men in the hunting festival up close? They then came across one of the ladies dealing with a rambunctious horse. So at Ellie's command, Jean took care of the woman. However, no one was expecting a boar that had gotten shot to ram and startle Ellie's horse and knock her over. Luckily, Irvin was there to catch her. Count Hayden pulled the arrow out of the boar to check if it was Irvin's shot that caused this. However, the arrows were different. Irvin then escorted Ellie to the front of the castle, where all the girls started gawking over how dreamy he was. Sophia was pissed that her maid's plot to discourage Ellie was unsuccessful, all without knowing Irvin was listening in. During another evening gathering, Anna spotted Ellie and Sophia leaving together for some reason. Sophia claimed Lilia invited her to explore the old castle, making Ellie believe Lilia was so full of curiosity. However, as anyone could have expected, that was a lie to lock Ellie inside by herself. This castle is supposedly haunted with a curse and a specter of sorts. And even though Ellie was a little shook, Irvin was already inside, prepared to keep her safe. Ellie fell over out of fear, but he didn't mean to scare her. He picked her up and explained he was from the foreign country of Maldura, the one that bordered Count Hayden's town. Irvin posed a question. If he killed Ellie now, would Sosland go to war? He was just joking though. He handed her a handkerchief, and walking along the way, Ellie learned Irvin's mother was from Sosland. His father from Maldura and his mother from here met by chance and fell in love. With the blood of both countries running through his veins, he also felt the burden of both of their histories. In the past, Maldura had prepared for war against Sosland many times, and he was also aware Sosland saw Maldura as an uncivilized country. That's why he was so surprised to hear Ellie's proposal to keep things at peace. So he thanked her for that. He was even fine with her being an idealistic dreamer. After all, where does a country go if it's not following the ideals of the person standing at the top? Her close confidants backed her, so that she could have more pride as the fiancée of the crown prince. And with that, now was the time for the two standing in the back to reveal themselves. Jean and Irvin's attendant, Ray, a man whose white hair has people mistaking him for a specter. However, they weren't alone, with assailants entering the building that both Ray and Irvin quickly began dealing with. Jean ran off with Ellie, only to find Anna taken hostage in the next room over. The assailants were confused, not knowing which woman was Eliana Bernstein. The men reveal themselves to be from Maldura, and their plan is to murder Sosland's crown prince's fiancé and the prince of Maldura. But Ellie was confused about the talk of Maldura's prince. Irvin then arrived, ashamed of his countrymen for trying to provoke a war, already figuring out they must have been sent by the third prince. However, the assailants get quickly dispatched by men in robes, courtesy of Prince Christopher. Chris had heard there was a guest of honor here. That would be Irvin, Prince of Maldura, whose mother was the daughter of Duke Slade. Going outside, they learned Sophia was just a pawn to this whole scheme, enacted truly by her maid Rona, who was a spy from Maldura. Back in the castle, Irvin explained that his mother loved this land that she was born and raised on. However, Duke Slade was planning an insurrection against the royal family and colluding with Maldura. At the time, Irvin's father, who was a prince then, had met his mother investigating Sosland. We then learned from Theodore that the rebellion was actually revealed by Irvin's mother, who met her end to protect her birth country being branded as a traitor. Ellie, now knowing the bravery of Irvin's mother, gained the resolve to tell the Count she wanted to continue doing things her way. Many nobles tended to rely on force, but she felt that was really no different than a bratty child who brags about their strength. This made Count Hayden break into laughter. He now saw her youth and potential and pledged his faith in that their country would not become a battleground with her guidance. Later, Ellie grabbed onto Chris because she missed him so much. He then showed her the ribbon he kept on her every day while he was out. That was enough talking though. The prince wanted a kiss, only for them to get interrupted by one of the maids. On the last day of the hunting festival, Count Hayden showed his remarkable skills, earning a wreath, which was placed in dedication of Irvin's mother. At the end, Ellie saw Prince Irvin off, who was very fond of the idea that their countries would maintain peace for a lifetime. She told him to come visit in spring, when the flowers of Edel would bloom, so Irvin wondered if she'd be married to Prince Chris by then. Touching her head, he asked her what would happen if he snatched her away, just like his father did to his mother. But with Chris there, he was just joking. Or was he? On another day, Prince Chris was so busy, he completely ignored Glenn barging in with problems afoot. In fact, most everyone ignored Glenn. Eliana was later bombarded by the Queen's attendants, who wanted her to try on a variety of outfits. Everyone is busy in preparation for the Holy Night's banquet, and Ellie hasn't even returned home because of it. she becomes particularly fixated on a design with Yule flowers, where in ancient mythology, the flower is said to be the symbol of the maiden loved by the goddess. She had some advice to give about the design, which made the attendants begin fighting over her, all wanting help with Ellie's fashion critique. Then, Queen Henrietta Ashrold appeared somewhat impatient because Ellie hadn't chosen an outfit yet. She then scolded Ellie because the role of the crown princess was not to gain popularity by giving useful advice to companies, nor be swayed by the maids. The queen was swift in her judgment for what Ellie would wear, and Ellie wondered if she could ever keep up with the queen. Seeing the attendants out, the queen then warned Ellie that once the date of her wedding was officially set, she wouldn't make things any easier on her. Ellie needed to learn to read what lies beneath a person and the art of quarreling with veteran deceivers. The queen then reminded Ellie to call her mother when it was just the two of them, and that she must not be embarrassed to address her that way. The queen didn't want to make it sound like she was forcing it from Ellie. Having tea together, the queen then spoke of the Ashen Nightmare from 15 years ago. It was a plague that originated in the northeast of Sosland and produced a colossal amount of deaths, including Ellie's mother. The queen herself had also fallen ill from it and was quarantined from the palace for a period of time. During the time she was ill, a lot of issues were brought to light, one of them being that Prince Christopher was the only direct heir to the throne. Once he ascends the throne, Theodore, being the king's younger brother, would lose his rights to succession. But at the moment, Theodore still has a spot. The court is currently divided into 3 factions: those who favor Theodore, those who favor Christopher, and those who remain neutral. With Theodore making the decision to handle the royal archives, the farthest position from power, he avoided a potential struggle for the throne. The next issue was that Prince Chris may choose to have concubines, and the queen was also willing to accept from one of their dukedoms on behalf of her son. Hearing that made Ellie's heart sink. Attending tea with Sharon Gardwin, Glen's forced fiancé, and her attendant, Ellen, the little duchess brought up old memories Chris had with her big sister Mirai from about 6 years ago. Ellie knew Mirai as the Grand Duchess of the Miserable Dukedom, and she was also known as the Pearl Princess, known for her beauty and wit. She had gotten married to a nobleman and was made to step down from her duchess position. She also had interacted with Chris a lot in their youth, and at one time, she was a potential candidate for his fiancé. Sharon would have loved to see her big sister attend the Holy Knight's banquet as well, but she was still mourning her husband, who passed less than 2 years ago. Sharon then pleaded for Chris to comfort Mirai as her childhood friend, and for Ellie to give him her blessings. However, Chris stopped her there, because he had already given her condolences from their kingdom. He didn't want to bother Mirai any further and disrespect the memories of her husband. Chris then got called for official business, and gracefully kissed Ellie's hand, making everyone gush. They were supposed to see each other afterwards, but the both of them got so wrapped up in official duties that they didn't. While greeting guests for the evening, the queen signaled Ellie to be wary of Viscountess Donner and her daughter Matilda, whose dress had the design of the Yule flower Ellie mentioned she wanted before. Matilda had supposedly designed this herself. Could this be a coincidence? The Donner ladies were quite rude, speaking of their talents so boldly in front of Ellie. However, this was all a power play to get Matilda in as a concubine to the prince, and the queen even said she'd consider it. As Matilda bowed, she gave Ellie one of the nastiest smirks. The queen then told Ellie to go fix her hair, which was really time for Ellie to think alone, otherwise she might expose how pathetic her face looked. She knew the Yule dress design was no coincidence. It was 100% based on the remark she had made the other day, meaning there's someone leaking information about her. Ellie felt exhausted, questioning her worthiness standing beside the queen. She decided to get some fresh air outside, and spotted Chris chatting with Ellen. It seems she had a letter to give from Lady Mirai, scaring Ellie into thinking another woman wanted to be his concubine and he might be acknowledging it. While having hot cocoa with her brother and Anna, Ellie was so down, her brother noticed. She said she was fine because she was planning to talk about it with Chris herself. Alexei then appeared, dumping his document delivery work onto Ellie like usual. Delivering to her first place, the workers bombarded her with even more things to deliver. She thought more about Lady Mirai, the Pearl Princess, bringing her mood down further. Then Alan appeared, offering to help take some of the load off of her. Ellie then had a new issue to deal with. The Donner family were military diehards, so if Matilda was really to become Chris's concubine, countries to the northeast of Sosland may see their future actions as provocation of war. She decided to go visit Chris's office to address her concerns, but he wasn't in today. She then spotted Lady Mirai's letter, and it made her so distraught, she put her things down and quickly walked away. Later, the Queen's personal attendant explained Chris's potential concubine situation with Ellie. She divulged that Viscountess Donner was more than likely promoting her daughter Matilda because of her own unfulfilled dream. The Viscountess herself was a candidate for marriage to the previous king in the past, and since Ellie's father has been cutting the military budget every year, he's not thought highly by those associated with the military. So Matilda is in the conversation as a concubine to pressure the inner court. The attendant questioned if Ellie could handle the prince's concubines, and this only disheartened her further. On the next day, Ellie once again attempted to talk to Chris about her concerns, but walking in, she overheard Chris getting ready to leave for an issue where a bridge girder collapsed, injuring some workers. This particular region, known as the Azul region, was the one the Ashen Nightmare had stemmed from. He then spotted Ellie and was so excited to see her. He held her close, telling Ellie he needed more of her. He joked about having Glenn teach him how to steal into a woman's bedroom at night, making her blush and certainly making the other guys think this was way too much. As he was about to go in for a kiss, the boys told him if he had time to flirt, then he could get to business faster and clear everything up before the banquet. So, Ellie wished him the best, but now having seen him again, she felt more pressure in her heart than before. A few days later, Ellie was invited to tea with Lady Sharon. Their tea was private, and Sharon did not beat around the bush, saying she wanted to be Chris's partner for the Holy Knight's banquet instead of Ellie. She wanted to give everyone the clear that Chris still had high regards for her big sister Mirai, giving Mirai the opportunity to be one of Chris's concubines. Sharon considered Ellie to be the prince's burden, because if Mirai were Chris's fiancée, she'd easily be able to hold down all of his concubines as well as the nobles in the inner court. Sharon believed Ellie could maintain her position as a figurehead princess, while Mirai handled all the essential duties. These words hit Ellie hard. She didn't know whether or not Chris was willing to take on concubines, and she wouldn't know unless she asked. But now, she was worried she might be getting in the way of Chris and Mirai loving each other ever since they were children. She knew she still had to ask him directly, but what if everything she was worried about was true? Ellie wanted to be with him, since their feelings for each other were mutual. She's tried her best to be worthy of being next to him, but she couldn't keep up. Walking outside, she spotted her brother Alfred inviting Anna to be his partner at the Holy Banquets Festival. He told her that as a man, he was captivated by her, but Ellie left before she could hear Anna's answer. Hearing Chris returned, Ellie went into his office. However, he wasn't expecting her to ask him to postpone their wedding ceremony. His expression wasn't so cheery. Ellie ran away, making it to the garden area where her long locks got caught in some branches. She struggled to get out, but luckily, Ellen appeared helping to free her, and that's when Ellie started to break down. Chris followed as well, wanting to talk things over. Ellen could tell things were tense. She suggested Chris calm down first. Chris told Ellen to stand down because this didn't involve her. However, Ellen refused to disregard a frightened woman. Chris tried calling Ellie personally, but Ellie apologized, asking for some alone time. She wanted to go home for the day, so he accepted and walked away. Ellie rode back home in despair, and Chris wasn't looking any better. At home, she calmed down enough to realize she should go back and apologize to Chris. But feeling the weight of the expectations placed on her, she thought of herself as the same bibliophile princess who understood nothing. She eventually returned to the palace, where some of the maids were ordered to retrieve her. They went to Ellie's castle room, where they overheard Matilda pressuring one of the palace servants named Sarah. Sarah was trying to explain that the dress Eliana was to wear at the banquet was strictly controlled by the queen, and wouldn't be anywhere in this room. But Matilda didn't care. She wanted to find something she could use to stay ahead of Ellie. She needed to stand out more than Ellie at the banquet, otherwise her grandfather and mother would reprimand her. Sarah still had reservations about them raiding Ellie's room. However, Matilda reminded her it was her family that helped Sarah become a palace servant. And then she called Sarah a damned Azulite, basically looking down on Sarah from being one of the commoners where the Ashen Nightmare originated from. Ellie then entered, prompting Matilda to quickly recompose herself. She was at first posing like she did nothing wrong, but aggressively shifted to her advantage being if she were to become Chris's concubine, the military might be at ease. Ellie ignored Matilda's words and instead pulled out some ink harvested from the Azul region. Ellie had Sarah personally retrieve the ink, but was willing to give it to Matilda so things could be at peace. However, Matilda had no interest in anything involving the Azulites. Ellie then walked over to Sarah and challenged Matilda's prejudice. 15 years ago, when the disease that came from the Azul region wasn't known as the Ashen Nightmare, the river in the region flooded due to unprecedented torrential rains, and many of the bridges spanning the river were washed away. The Azul region relied on the bridges to commune with other territories, so during that time, it became a solitary island. This is how the plague had spread. The specific village where the people thought the disease had originated from was isolated, and the village people had to fight the plague off alone. However, they were the one place that had the survivors, so it was a complete misunderstanding that many people had. Ellie then explained the plague most likely spread from a neighboring empire they destroyed, which was trapped alongside the Azul region, and that their people were just victims. Chris was in fact dealing with the bridge in the Azul region right now to ensure they wouldn't get trapped again, and ultimately prevent a repeat of the tragedy. Ellie then flat out refused to accept Matilda as a concubine, given her lack of care for the lower class of their kingdom. This pissed Matilda off, so she attempted to spill ink on Ellie, only for Sarah to stop her, spilling the ink instead on Matilda's own dress. And it looks like Chris actually heard the whole thing. Matilda tried to deflect blame on Ellie, but Jean subdued her, exposing her crimes of attempted assault on Ellie and perpetuating falsehoods against Chris. Matilda still pleaded for Chris's help, so he scoffed, wondering why everyone thought he was so slow that he didn't know the truth about what was going on. He knew Matilda's grandfather was a big influence on the military, but he was thinking her grandfather's time for resignation had come. He learned the Donner family had some bad business practices from behind the scenes, and now they were headed for bankruptcy. Also, in regards to Chris's concubine problem, the Donner family is the only one that has spread that nonsense. For Chris, he wanted Eliana as his one and only princess with no other women beside him. After Matilda got taken away, Ellie remembered she had to apologize. However, Chris apologized instead, saying he was completely at fault. Ellie couldn't understand why he was doing this. She was the one who worried on her own and came to her own conclusions. Her heart became so full of jealousy, even now, causing her to hurt the person she loved. She cried, telling the prince he did nothing wrong, and the prince walked up to embrace her and she cried into him. She talked about her anxieties that burdened her heart one by one, not being able to become like Queen Henrietta, learning the horrors of the court and being discouraged by them, the anxiety she had about Chris having concubines, the doubt that gnawed at her due to Lady Mirai. She admitted she thought her failures held him back, but Chris assured her she hadn't done anything wrong. He knew she was earnest and always tried too hard. He felt he should have considered that and stayed by her side. He then promised the thing with Lady Mirai was just a misunderstanding. He also knew Ellie wasn't accustomed to official business yet, and was just going to take care of it on his end for the time being. He admitted to his own fault of trying to resolve everything on his own. They then heard the queen looking for the both of them, and when she entered, they were hiding behind the window curtain. Not knowing they were around, the queen admitted to how much she loved Ellie, and how she refrained from inviting Ellie to social gatherings, because she didn't want to interrupt her reading time. After the queen left, Chris explained to Ellie that his mother had liked her ever since they were engaged 4 years ago. He reminded Ellie of when his mother repeatedly invited her to tea parties when she had just become his fiancée. That was because the queen wanted to boast about Ellie to everyone. She felt she had to do it. His mother is just strict on Ellie because she loves her so much. She just can't be honest about it. Chris thought Ellie was perfect how she was. She always thought of the people first and foremost, and she was worthy to stand by his side. Ellie truly felt secure in his words. She teared up, asking Chris marry no one besides her, so he held her again, saying even if she ran, he'd catch her every time. He wanted her to never doubt his feelings. And just as they were about to kiss, they heard Sharon looking for them, so Ellie pushed Chris away. Someone always interrupted when they were about to get to the good part. Sharon was still going on about being Chris's partner for the banquet, but this time she had a special book to give Ellie in exchange. It was a ship's log belonging to Captain Vigo, also known as the King of the Seas. Ellie was getting tempted, knowing historically he was the first to accomplish the conquest of the eastern ship routes and a legendary figure. Oh man, Chris could see the temptation in her eyes. Ellie began reaching for it, but pulled away perceiving Chris's gaze. This was a lot of work for her, but she refused the book. Ellen reminded Sharon Mirai told her to watch how she spoke. However, Sharon felt her big sister deserved to be happier than anyone. Ellie could see where Mirai was coming from, but her own feelings for Chris were real. She refused to give up her place next to him. Chris then explained Ellie contributed more to the kingdom than many people thought. She was even researching how to cure the Ashen Nightmare, since it hadn't totally gone away. Glenn then arrived to deliver another letter from Mirai to Chris. Ellie almost got up and left at the sight of it, but Chris had her sit down. He explained that Mirai's husband may have been assassinated, but she had been sending letters to Chris telling him he didn't need to investigate, and instead the miserable dukedom would handle their own affairs. Mirai also knew Sharon's imagination was overactive, and asked that Chris tolerate her words like the fanciful tales of a child. She even sincerely congratulated Chris for his engagement to Ellie, who was indeed his first and only love. Things ended fine, so Chris and Ellie were able to attend the banquet as a beautiful couple. The queen complimented Ellie's outfit, as she personally had it tailored and even dyed from the ink Ellie had requested. She truly was a loving mother-in-law. The queen was still annoyed that the daughter ladies had stolen Ellie's Yule flower dress idea, but felt she had no choice but to be nice about it, since Ellie was the one who came up with it. Ellie was comforted by the queen's words, and even called her mother naturally. This made the queen shy and tsundere-like, even covering herself with her broken fan. She tried to tell Ellie she was just scolding her. The king then admired all the work Ellie had done for their empire, and offered her a reward of her choice. So naturally, she asked to be rewarded with a vacation to read all the books that she hasn't had the time to read, undisturbed. He then officially decreed this bibliophile her vacation, one that no one else was allowed to interfere with. Next, they enjoyed the ball where Ellie and Chris danced in front of everyone, and outside, Chris apologized for not keeping his promise to simply let her read books. He felt he was a bit of a disappointing prince, making her put up with everything. However, Ellie told him he was very dashing, a wonderful person practically wasted on herself. To her, he was the greatest prince, always and forever. The two then romantically promised alone time with each other. Everyone then came outside for the next phase of the banquet, where Chris presented the trees lit with the ink Ellie requested from the Azul region. This would be the new tradition for the banquet moving forward. And with that, the two kissed under the lights. What a sweet end to this anime. But I tell you what, there was so much convoluted exposition I had to shorten. Still, I think Chris and Ellie are such a pretty couple, and this was a heartwarming tale of dealing with insecurity. Subscribe to the channel for more. Also, watch this next video. It's me, Comfy Tea. I'll see you all in the next one.